Hi there, and thank you for tuning in. Today I will be looking at two lenses. One that is, if you've seen my other videos, is a well-known one. That is the Nikon Nikkor 1.4D. And today I'm comparing it to the Pentax Super Takumar, as it's called. Some of these are also called SMC, Super Multi-Coated. I don't know really what the difference is, so if you know that, please let me know. But I think maybe this is just a little older version of those lenses. This one is very famous. It has a lot of praise, and it also is maybe a spectacular thing. It's a little bit radioactive. The rear part of the glass is radioactive. It's not in the coating, but the glass as such. So be a little bit careful how much time you spend with this one, especially if you're looking through the viewfinder. But I will be comparing these two, and not a super technical compare, but more like a user compare. I'm very interested in the sensor focus, a little bit about the bokeh or the bokeh balls. Not so much, but I have a little view on that. But mainly the center sharpness, the weight, the look and the feel, and so on and so forth. And I will be shooting this on a Sony a7R II, and I will be shooting in JPEGs and straight out of camera. I will not do any edits to the pictures as such. So there you have it. I have bought two different adapters. One is from K&F Concepts, and that is because this Takumar lens comes with an M42 lens, which is the screw lens that needs to go to NEX, which is the Sony mount. And then I also over here have a Metabones, which goes to from the Nikon F mount also to the NEX mount. Both of these adapters are as stupid as they come. It's basically a piece of metal. So I cannot imagine that they would do any difference to the test that I'm about to do. And also I will be shooting in manual focus. That's basically the option I have. So I will do my best to focus using focus peak and peak indicators. Yeah, so that's sort of my approach. And I hope you will enjoy this little compare. And towards the end, I will draw a conclusion whether I think you should go for this one or that one. So hang on. So maybe another big surprise that these two primes are very similar in terms of size and weight. They both let through a tunnel of light. As you can see here, it feels like most of the lens itself is simply filled with glass. So that comes with the territory when you're down in 1.4 minimum aperture. In terms of blades, the Nikon has 7, the Takumar only has 6, so a slight advantage to the Nikon. If we look at the weight of these two lenses, they are very similar. I think to a large extent it's because there's the same amount of glass here. The Takumar 240 in terms of grams, and the Nikkor a little bit less, 223. And I think some of the explanation could be related to the fact that the Takumar has more metal in the build. The throw is metal and so on and so forth, whereas the Nikon is more plastic and rubber, as far as I can tell. So here I have two shots, one with the Takumar to the left and the Nikon to the right, and it's exactly the same position the camera was in, shot on a tripod and all that. And as you can see, I can read the letters on the Takumar down to 40, maybe 39, and on the Nikon it goes down to 37. So a few more centimeters here, or fewer centimeters in minimal focal length. So a small advantage to the Nikon lens. It's not so much that it really is a differentiator here in my mind, but a slight advantage to the Nikon. Okay, so here to the left I have the Takumar, to the right I have the Nikon. Both of these are at f1.4, meaning shot wide open. If we go and zoom heavily in to 4:1, which is a little bit crazy, but let's just give it a try. I would say in terms of sharpness, I would say these are very sharp, both of them. And of course there is a difference here. It seems like the contrast is a little bit better with the Nikon, and also there's a yellow or orange feel to the Takumar, and that has to do with the glass being a little bit orange. I've been told that you can remove that if you leave the glass in the sunshine for a few hours, so I probably need to do that. But in terms of sharpness, I think wise men say you should compare that 1 to 1, and I would say, I don't know if this is possible to see on YouTube, but I would say this is a draw. I would say this is very, very sharp. So those who say at least center sharpness is soft at wide open for these lenses, I would beg to differ. If we look at 2 other pictures, same motive, you can see here the structures in the table are now much more visible. Still the difference where the Takumar appears to be a little bit more warm, and the Nikon here to the right a little less so. But I think again the pictures are very, very similar. If you go in 1 to 1 like this, again I think you will see that they are very similar. And if we go crazy close to this, again it looks to me like there's better contrast in the Nikon, but in terms of sharpness I would also call this a draw. Yeah, I don't know what you think. If you disagree with me, please leave a comment in the comment section, but I think I would call this, for all practical purposes, at this distance at least, a draw between the 2. Finally, if we then look at the difference between 1.4 and 5.6, here it is. So this is now the Takumar compared to the Takumar. And if I go into 4.1, which is, I again underline, this is crazy close, you can see to the left 1.4. It is of course a little bit more, I don't know if we would say soft, but a little bit more washed out in the colors, whereas the 5.6 is much more clear. But in terms of sharpness, I would say, yeah, I would say they're pretty close still. So my takeaway from all this is I'm pretty impressed with the sharpness you get from these lenses, also shot at wide open. And here Nuomoto, both of them shot at f1.4, and as you can see, if I go close to compare these 2, I would say that they are very, very similar. Again, it seems like the Takumar appears a little bit washed out compared to the Nikon. The colors are more bright and clear, but otherwise I would say there's very little difference. And if you look here on the cork thing, the difference in the structure here, I think you can see the same amount of detail. In this picture I zoomed in so that I focused on the line here that I'm marking here, this line over here as well. And one of my takeaways was that I had to take this picture several times, because I came back with pictures that showed that either the Takumar was sharper than the Nikon or the Nikon was sharper than the Takumar. And every time it turned out it was because of my lack of ability to focus precisely with such a narrow depth of field as you have at f1.4. So lesson learned here, at least for my part, is that if you want to shoot with a lens this open, you need to be really, really good at focusing manually, because otherwise your pictures will be out of focus. And I try to, you have this focus peak and focus indicators, and I think even though the focus indicator was telling me this was in focus, just the slightest variance, a touch on the throw, would simply bring the picture out of focus. So it's so sensitive when you shoot these pictures that I think that some of those who say that these lenses are not sharp, it's actually maybe more because they didn't know how to focus sharp on a manual lens. That would be my claim. Another we can look at here is the little yellow stickers. I would again say this is a draw. To me they look very, very similar in sharpness. We can also take a look at the glass here. Again, I would say this is very, very close. If you are a bokeh fanatic, fanatic may be such a negative word, but if you sort of enjoy a good bokeh, I would say that again the difference here is very, very minimal. maybe not so much here, but in other pictures I've seen that the Nikon has a little bit more rounded bokeh circles here, or whatever you call them, whereas the Takumar is a little bit more flat or oval, or whatever you want to call it. They are not as round as the Nikon ones, but again, in terms of so many other parameters, these bokeh circles to me look very, very similar. And I think it's actually only photo nerds that care about this. I don't think anyone other than people who are really, really interested in photography would notice that there is maybe a slight difference in the bokeh between these two lenses. So in conclusion here, I think these two lenses perform fantastic, and I think they perform very similar. The comparison in terms of price is perhaps not fair, because I bought this one used on eBay and I bought this one brand new. Maybe you can find a copy used on eBay where the price difference isn't that big, but I would say that if you don't need the autofocus on the Nikon one, and you don't need all the EXIF information that you get if you are lucky enough to have a Nikon camera that can talk to this lens, then I would say the Takumar is the one to go for. The problem with the Takumar is that you have to make sure that you get a good copy, and this of course is an issue when you're buying on eBay. How do you secure that? I would say if you go for a vendor that has where you can see that he sells a lot of glass and he has good ratings, and you read the specification or the description of the glass very carefully, I think you could mitigate that risk to a very, very large extent and get a very good lens for a extremely low price. I would say this copy I got is a little bit tired in terms of the mechanics. I think the stops on the aperture has gone, and also the throw here is a little bit tight in the near and the far end, but the glass is absolutely stellar, so I have no complaints whatsoever. This over here is the safe bet, where you basically know what you're getting. So if you don't like that risk, maybe that also could be a parameter in your decision making. But I would say if you're willing to take a little bit of a risk, or at least be willing to, or face the risk that you may need to return the lens if you get a bad copy, and the autofocus is not important to you, the comfort of the autofocus maybe because you're not planning to use this on a Nikon lens or camera, then I would say that the Takumar, for the price you pay for it, and the feel, the build quality and all of that, I would definitely go for that one. I'm not saying that the Nikon is poorly built. It's just like the look and the feel of especially the throw here. You can feel this was from a different age, where it just has a superior quality feel to it, whereas this one is there's nothing wrong with it, don't get me wrong, but this one feels so much more upmarket and classy than this one. So if that's important to you, again, I would point to the Takumar. But decision criteria are very individual, so I won't tell you what to do, but hopefully this little video helped you in your decision making. I think shooting with these super wide lenses is great fun. I really enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it too. Thank you for watching. As always, happy shooting. Take care. Bye bye.